Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam bhangam langyate girim yatkripātamaham vande Shri Gurudena Dharanam Paramananda Madhavam Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Prasharane Nirvishesha Shunavadi Paschachari Siddhar. Thank you for joining. So we will resume our discussion from Canto 6, Chapter 16th. King Chitraketu meets the Supreme Lord. So in Prem Kishore Prabhu, am I restarting from the correct point?
From 20th verse, Prabhu.
From the 20th verse?
Yeah.
From the 21st verse?
21st verse, sorry.
20th
is done. Yeah. 21st.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so in the first 11 verses, we have the dead son of Chitraketu speaking, Shokashok, about, he speaks essentially in 10 verses, he speaks the Bhagavad Gita summary, that the soul is eternal, body is temporary, all body relationships are temporary, they keep changing, and then he goes back. Then in the next 5 verses, 12 to 16, are the funeral rites for the child and the atonement of the queen. And this essentially is also beginning of detachment in Chitraketu. Then from verse 17, Narad Muni begins to instruct Chitraketu, explicit instructions. Okay, so we are now on verse 21. वचस्य उप्रते प्राप्य य एको मनसा सह अनामरूपश्चिन्मात्रा सोऽव्यान्न सदसत्परः. The words and mind of the conditioned soul cannot approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for material names and forms are not applicable to the Lord, who is entirely spiritual, beyond the conception of gross and subtle forms. The impersonal Brahman is another of his forms. May he, by his pleasure, protect us. So we see that Narad Muni, despite the fact that he is a pure devotee, he is offering obeisances to the impersonal Brahman. Right? So the important lesson is that devotees, they do not neglect or minimize or disrespect the impersonal form. Right? It's just that they have no misconceptions about it. Right? So it's the same like demigods, right? So it's not that the devotees are expected to minimize the demigods or disrespect them, but they have no misconception that they are the supreme Lord, right? So Narad Muni, he clearly understands, right? So Vishnu Chakravarti says that in the Isopnishad it is explained that the impersonal feature of the Lord is auspicious. The Paramatma form is more auspicious, and the Bhagavan is the most auspicious. So in the mantra 16, the personal form of the Lord is described as Kalyantamam, the most auspicious. Next verse. Yasminidam yataschedam tishthe apyeti jayate brahmasva eva mrishchatis Tasmai te Brahmane Namaha. As pots made completely of earth are situated on earth after being created and are transformed into earth again when broken, the cosmic manifestation is caused by the Supreme Brahman, situated in the Supreme Brahman and annihilated in the same Supreme Brahman. Therefore, since the Supreme Lord is the cause of Brahman, let us offer him our respectful obeisances. So it's kind of interesting. The very first line of the word, Yasmin Idam Yataschedam, it is also sung by Gajendra when he sings his sutra. So the first verse is Om Namo Bhagavate Tasmai Yatechetam. So that's the first verse. The second verse is Yasmin Edam Yataschetas. First line. The other lines are obviously different. So the mood over here is that respect is being offered to the Lord as the cause of the universe. So the universe arises from the Lord, the universe resides in the Lord, and then the universe, after dissolution, goes back into the Lord. Yanno sparshate vidur mano buddhinyendra swaha antarbahishcha vitatam vyamo vyomavatta nato samyaham. The Supreme Brahman emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and expands like the sky. Although untouched by anything material, it exists within and without. Nonetheless, the mind, intelligence, senses, and life forces can neither touch him nor know him. I offer him my respectful obeisances. So these are Upanadishic points, right? So you will see a lot of parallel between the prayers in Isopnishat and these prayers over here. So when they start talking about the Lord in these kinds of apparent contradiction, that he is within and without, he is untouched, but still he is there, um, he is everywhere, but nobody can see him. So these are kind of the way that the Upanishads uh, present the various aspects of the personality of Godhead. This particular point is made in Upanishad Mantra 50, where it is said that Lord walks but does not walk, he's far but he's near, he's within everything, yet he's outside of everything. Verse 24. Dehendra prana manodiyo me yadam shavidda pracharanti karmasu naivena yadloham iva pratatpam sthaneshu tadrashtrapadeshamite. As iron has the power to burn when made red hot in the association of fire, so the body senses the living force, mind, and intelligence. Although merely lumps of matter can function in their activities when infused with a particle of consciousness by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As iron, as iron cannot burn unless heated by fire, the bodily senses cannot act unless favored by the Supreme Brahman. So the dependence of the jiva on the Supreme Lord is given over here. Right? It is only through the Supreme Lord that the jiva gets knowledge and gets ignorance. Right? So the analogy that is used is that when the iron rod is in contact with the fire, it is like fire, else not. Right? So uh, the understanding is that when the jiva is in contact with the Supreme Brahman, right, only then does the body, senses, living force, mind, and intelligence work. So this analogy is explained in three ways. So let's look at the first way. The first is only when the iron rod is in contact with fire, it is like fire, else not. So this talks about the ability of the jiva to perceive is only there because of his connection with the Lord. Right? So yadamshra vidaha. So when a portion of the Lord's consciousness enters the jiva, only then karmashu. Karmashu means that then the body, the senses, life phase, intelligence can move towards the sense object. Right. So this is like the iron rod in contact with fire. Now an unheated iron rod does not burn objects, right? So what does it mean? That when the jiva is not in contact with the Lord, then all these things, the senses, intelligence, etc., they are inactivated. Now, what proof do we have of that? Right. So Vishnu Chakravarti says the proof we have is that anyada. Anyada is that in other stages, like deep sleep and fainting, this awareness of the sense objects is not possible. Right. So based on that, we can say that the mind or the intelligence or the senses are not independently able to enable the jiva to perceive the sense objects. Only when they get the empowerment of the Lord, they are able to perceive. And when the Lord withdraws that empowerment, then they lose that ability. And Srila Prabhupada in this quotes the Matata Smriti Jnanam Apohanam Cha, verse from Bhagavad Gita, that from me the conditioned soul receives memory, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So I'm not going through Prabhupada's purport, they're very nice. The reason I'm not going is because these points we have studied many, many times in both Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Strongly recommend that you read them, but in the interest of time, I'm not going deeper into the purport. I'm summarizing it. The second is, so the first was that only when the iron rod is in contact with the fire, it is like fire, else not. Second way of understanding the analogy is that when the iron rod is in contact with fire, it is fire. So what it means is that the Lord empowers the jiva to see him. By giving the jiva a small portion of his consciousness, the Lord perfects the jiva's seeing power. So when the fire heats the iron rod, then for that time, there is no difference between the iron rod and fire. Because all the qualities of the fire are now being displayed by the iron rod. However, the fact still remains that it is only because of the fire that the iron rod has those qualities. So it is only because of the empowerment of the Lord that the jiva is able to see him. So the understanding here is that only when you get similar qualities can you perceive, because the Lord is very subtle. We cannot perceive by the gross senses, but when the Lord empowers, then our senses become subtle. So then we are able to see the Lord. Right? This is the second understanding. Third one is that even though iron becomes like fire, when it comes in contact with fire, it can never burn the fire. So what does this mean? That Brahman knows the jiva, but the jiva can never fully know the Brahman. So when the senses of the jiva are activated by the contact with Brahman, then the jiva is able to perceive to the extent that the Brahman is empowering the jiva. It's not like that the iron rod becomes like fire, and then it begins to consume the fire, or it develops qualities of its own. Yeah. So the jiva can never exceed the Brahman. It will always be dependent on the Brahman. It will always be subordinate to the Brahman. This empowerment is one way. One cannot say that the fire becomes contaminated by the iron rod. So one cannot say that when the Brahman is empowering the jiva is contaminating the Brahman. And this is more in terms of refuting the Mayavadi conception. And in the Hamsaguhya prayers, this is by Daksha, this is Canto 4th chapter, he says that because they're only matter, the body, the life phase, the external and internal senses, the five gross elements, the subtle sense objects cannot know their own nature. The nature of the other senses or the nature of their controllers. But the living being, because of his spiritual nature, can know his body, life phase, and senses. Nevertheless, although the living being is completely aware of them, he is unable to see the Supreme Being. He is omniscient and unlimited. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Okay, so here Daksha is talking about more from the third analogy, right? That the iron rod can never equal or exceed the fire. Okay. So the next verse is in prose, and this is the mantra that is given for Chitraketu to chant, given by Narad Muni. Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mano Maha Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Mahanubhavaya Mahavibhuti Pataye Sakal Satvata Parivrada Nikar Kamal Kudmalopa Palaita Charanarvinda Yugal Param Pramesthin Namaste. O Transcendental Lord, who are situated in the topmost planet of the spiritual world, your two lotus feet are always massaged by a multitude of the best devotees with their lotus bud hands. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, complete as six opulences. You are the Supreme Person mentioned in the Purusha prayers. You are the most perfect, self-realized master of all mystic power. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So the previous verses spoke about how the Lord gives knowledge, ability, the empowering of the senses. This verse talks about how the Lord is the source of rasa. So when you see things like and the lotus feet are massaged by the lotus hands of the devotees, then there is that hint of personal service there, right? So what is Narad Muni saying over here? That also engage me in the service of massaging your feet. So Chakravarti Pad says that if Chitraketu if Chitraketu were to say this verse, then the Lord will object. He will say that my lotus feet are massaged by the likes of Lakshmi Devi. You are fallen. How can I give you this exalted service? So then the response is Param Paramesthin. Param Paramesthin, it appears in this verse. So Param Paramesthin means that of the great, you are the greatest, which means that you are right, that I am not qualified to do this service, but you are the greatest of the great. Nothing is impossible for you. If you so desire, you can make me qualified to do this service. Then he says, Maha Anubhavaya Maha Vibhuti Pate, that you are the most perfect self-realized master of all mystic powers. Okay? So, reinforcing that point. The Lord might say that even if I am the greatest of the great, but you have so many contaminations. And Chitraketu, or the person who's praying, says, yes, that is true. You are the most perfect, I am the most imperfect. You are self-realized, I have no understanding. But you are the master of all mystic powers. So mystic power means to do miracles. Right? That's what yogis do with mystic powers, that by prapti they will make things appear. And so you are the person, you are the personality that can do miracles. So you can allow even a fallen jiva to engage in your service. Now the verse demonstrates further humility. So it says that Sakala Satvat Parivruddha Nikara, that your lotus feet are being massaged by a multitude of the best devotees. Excuse me. So Narad or Chitraketu or the person who is praying is not claiming an exclusive rights to the service of the Lord. In fact, the opposite. He's saying that there are already people much more qualified than me. They are the perfected devotees who are already serving you perfectly. Right? So I am not asking to be made equal to them just because I'm asking for similar service. I'm not asking to replace them. All I'm asking is that make me a part of that group, the group of devotees who are serving you one way or the others. Whether, and it's not said directly in this verse, but in the mood of a devotee, it could be that maybe I can serve the devotees who are serving your lotus feet, or serve the devotees who are serving the devotees who are serving your lotus feet, right? So that and that mood of strong humility is also being presented. So we see in the prayers by Prithu Maharaj in the fourth canto, right? So he also makes a similar prayer where he says that um, perhaps you will allow me to. He prays to Lord Vishnu. Perhaps you will allow me to serve your lotus feet, right? And then, but then he's of course a lot more advanced, and then he says that maybe Lakshmi Devi will get angry at me, but I think you will favor me, right? And then again, in mood of humility, he says the reason you will favor me is because I'm a lot more fallen than Lakshmi Devi, and your nature is that you're kinder to those who are more fallen. That's why you will be more favorable to me. Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about this Shakal Sattvat Parveda, that the Sattvat means devotees and Shakal means together. So the devotees who also have lotus feet serve the lotus feet of the Lord with their lotus hands. The devotee may sometimes not be competent to serve the lotus feet of the devotee of the Lord, and therefore the Lord is addressed as Paramestan. But he is very kind to the devotees and he accepts the humble attempt of the devotee. Yeah. So this is the end of the instructions by Narad Muni to Chitraketu. Verse 26. Shri Sukha Vacha भक्तये तं प्रपन्नाय विद्यामादिस्य नारद यायावङ्गीरसा साकं धाम swayam bhuvam Prabhu. Sri Sukdev Goswami continued. Narad, having become the spiritual master of Chitraketu, instructed him fully in this prayer because Chitraketu was fully surrendered. O King Parikshit, Narad then left with the great sage Angira for the topmost planet known as Brahmalok. So here we see that Sukadev Goswami uh, is talking about the antecedents, and in the last line he said Dham Swayambhuvam Prabhu. So this Prabhu is to Parishit Maharaj, right? So the reason he's addressing him as Prabhu is to say that I have explained this to you in briefly, but you're capable of understanding the deeper purports of this uh, uh, teaching. Prabhupada uh, writes in the purport, Sri Subhasha Vidyaman. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that Nand Muni is the father of devotional service, and therefore, just to bestow causeless mercy upon King Chitraketu, Angira bought Narad Muni to instruct the king. These instructions are extremely effective. Anyone who follows in the footsteps of Narad Muni is certainly a pure devotee. And we also see amongst Angira and Narad Muni this mood of utter humility. Angira first came and preached to Chitraketu. Now, Angira is also competent. He is a very, very exalted personality. He himself is the son of Brahma. He is a peer of Narad Muni. But he gets Narad Muni there, right? So he's not competing that I want Chitraketu to be my disciple, nobody else's disciple. So I should keep him separate. He doesn't have that mood. He's happy when Narad Muni has come. In his own wisdom, Angira feels that Narad Muni can preach to him better. And at one point, Mr. Chakravarti does say that because Angira had initially offered him material benedictions, Nag Muni, he had brought Nag Muni to offer spiritual knowledge. Now, Chitraketu was obviously exalted, so he would have understood Angira's mood. That time it was not the limitation of Angira, it was the limitation of Chitraketu, because of which Angira gave him material benediction. But Angira again, being compassionate, wanted to make sure that Chitraketu gets all the mercy, he gets Narad um, uh, along him. And Narad Muni is like, he's called, Prabhupada would call him the traveling spaceman. And then actually you also see him traveling across the Bhagavatam, right from the very first canto, right? Uh, does anybody remember? How does Narad Muni appear in the first canto? Right from the first canto he appears.
When the sages came to
And
visit. When the sages came to
when the
visit.
sages, okay,
Came to visit.
okay.
And
During the
sorry, Prabhu. Sorry.
yeah, during the monsoon season, the sages came to visit, to stay with them. And then the mother served the sages, and then the mother passed away, and then Narad Muni was serving them, and then
Exactly. So that past time, the very first time he appears is as the spiritual master of Srila Vyasadeva. And Srila Vyasadeva is having his meltdown, identity crisis, and Narad Muni appears there. And so uh, he's preaching to a whole variety of people, right? So he's preaching to so somebody was giving a lecture and they were relating Narad Muni to the various programs in ISKCON, and they were saying that Narad Muni is like uh, congregational preaching to kings like Chitraketu and Prachinavari, then youth preaching to the sons of Daksha, right? To the Harishvasas and the Shablavashas. He made them brahmacharis. Then Sunday school, right? The youth program, kids program, Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruv Maharaj. Then he has outreach program. So what is outreach program? To people who are themselves not much interested, to Mrigradi, to the snake, to Valmiki. Then preaching to very exalted Vaishnavas, like the Prachetas. Then preaching to VIPs, Prithu Maharaj, Priyavrata, very, very exalted personalities. Preaching to professors, scholarly preaching, Vyasadeva. And then Chetana program. Chetana program is, I think it's for Matajis. He's like preaching to Vyadhu. So this diversity is a characteristic of spiritual advancement. So in the Western culture, there is the strength of infrastructure. And in the Vedic culture, there is the strength of the inner structure. Right? To strengthen infrastructure, diversity is sacrificed. That's the hallmark of infrastructure. That things are the same. The roads are the same. The shops are the same. The signs are the same. So the focus is on uniformity, and then it extends to everything. Like the fruits look the same, all the tomatoes look the same, they're big, round, and red. All the vegetables look the same. But by doing this, what do they call them? Gene whatever thingy that they change the genetic modification. Diversity is curtailed. It's just one particular subspecies that is focused on, right? And ultimately, diversity is even is eliminated in relationships. In the Vedic culture, there is a whole like there is so much of diversity in relationships. How you relate to your friends, to your parents, to your neighbors, to your spouse. So much diversity gives so much rasa or mellow. Like if you're growing up in India, you know that your neighboring uncle is almost like your father. They will chastise you. I remember my neighboring lady. If she would see me playing outside during exam time, she would come and scold me that it's time for exam. Why are you playing? Go inside. And I would just accept it that yes, it's a right to do it. So there was all this rasa that was created. But now, for the sake of convenience, all that is eliminated. So most of the relationships are very, very unidimensional. So while it gives convenience, like they say that if you go to India, you have to deal with family. Like Delhi people say family drama. Right? Here, family drama is limited because everybody lives in the structural boxes. I have my boundary, you respect my boundary. But then for the sake of convenience, happiness is eliminated. That sure, when families get together, they quarrel, but they also laugh. Right? They also have fun. Right? So it is this diversity that gives rasa or mellow. If everybody is polite, everybody is always handshaking and keep saying my space, your space, then there's no mellow over there. You may not fight, but there will be no happiness. Right? So even amongst the devotees, there are devotees who will come and then they will say that I only like one aspect of Krishna consciousness, whatever it is. And I remember once in the temple I'd given a class, And then one person came to me and said that, Prabhu, I'm just a simple devotee. I don't really relish this study of the Shastras. All I like is to chant and dance. Right. And then I said, why did Prabhupada give all these books? He gave a book because he wanted everybody to read. It's not that one becomes more advanced by reading or by not reading. Or there's somebody who will say that I don't enjoy kirtan. I can't take kirtan. I would rather sit and read. So look at Prabhupada, right? He was a scholar, he was a singer, a manager, preacher, pujari, everything. And he encouraged the devotees to also be the same. Right? Nowadays, there is focus on lack of diversity. Whereas in the Vedic time, the focus was in diversity of talents, diversity of relationships, diversity of endeavor. Like Srila Prabhupada was a special case, but you can see that in order to preach, he tried so many things. And so many things he failed in, but he continued to try. And if all he wanted was to print books, he would have never come to the West. He was already, his Bhagavatam was already being printed. So this is a nice realization that comes from this verse about the interplay between Chitraketu, Narada, and Angira Muni. Now, this pastime, it also implies the importance of vairagya for bhakti. When Angira first came, he did not instruct Chitraketu about bhakti because he was too materially absorbed. But because of the death of his son, he had developed Shamshan Vairagya. Like Shamshan Vairagya is detachment that comes out of grief. Right? Then Angira comes accompanied by the professor of Bhakti. So it means that there needs to be some Vairagya for the seed of Bhakti to germinate. As long as the jiva is too absorbed in material conception, Bhakti will not manifest. Right? And Prabhupada, he speaks eloquently about this point. Right? In the purport, he gives many shastric references and anecdotal references also of how renunciation, it helps in bhakti, and then it is also strengthened by bhakti, because it is said jnana vairagya, they are symptoms of bhakti. So they help bhakti and they also are strengthened by bhakti. So Prabhupada quotes 244, Bhogeshwar Prashakta Nam, Tyaparta Chetesham, Devasyatmika Buddhi Samadhavana Vidyate. That in the mind of those who are too attached to self-enjoyment and material opulence, the resolute determination for devotional service will not take place. Right? So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he has said Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. So Vairagya and Bhakti, they run on parallel lines. One is essential for the understanding of the other. Then anecdotally, Srila Prabhupada gives the success of ISKCON as an example. He says that the Krishna consciousness movement is progressing successfully in the Western countries at the present moment because the youth in the West have reached the stage of vairagya or renunciation. So this is a very, very important point, that Srila Prabhupada was preaching very strongly. He was preaching both in India and in US. Right? And even after he got success in the US, he went back to India and preached. And he did those Pandal programs, 10,000 people. But guess how many disciples did Prabhupada make in India? So in the 11 years that he had established ISKCON, he had made more than 5,000 disciples. And he spent so much time in India Guess how many disciples he made in India? Pick a number.
Maybe less than 1,000.
Maybe less than 1,000. Okay. Any other guesses? So he made less than 10 disciples, 10 Indian disciples.
Oh my goodness, Krishna.
Yeah. And even they were Indian bodied, not from India. So Gopal Krishna Maharaj from Canada. So the Bhakti Charu Maharaj was one of the last, or and Bhakti Charu Maharaj, 76 he became a disciple, and Prabhupada was so happy that within a year, first initiation, second initiation, sannyas, 3 initiations he got, and of course he was very qualified, also. So why? Because Prabhupada makes this point that this vairagya that was there in the West at the time, it was the opposite in India at the time. India was emerging from this long period of enslavement, and they were beginning to enjoy, they were beginning to get the sense of enjoying freely. And even though this hippie movement, the hippie movement lasted for, it's almost like it was made for Prabhupada. It started almost at the same time as Prabhupada came to the US. They say it started mid-60s, 64, 65, ran for about 10 years. A short-lived movement, not very long. And even out of the 10 years, it really peaked. It peaked around 68, 69. Right? And after that, the mentality turned back to one of material enjoyment. Right? So it's almost like they say Krishna arranged the Mahabharata to speak the Bhagavad Gita. It's almost like this whole hippie movement was arranged for Prabhupada to do that. But now things in India is different. Now ISKCON is the fastest growing movement in India. Literally millions of devotees are there, and Prabhupada definitely had that vision. While he did not have a lot of direct success in India, even during his lifetime, but nevertheless, he planted so many seeds there, to the point that now even in the West, people are complaining that ISKCON is becoming, instead of international society, Krishna consciousness is becoming an Indian society for Krishna consciousness. Okay, let's move on. Verse 27. चित्रकेतोस्तु तां विद्यां यथा नारद भाषितां धारयामाश सप्ताहम् अभक्षा सुषमाहितः. Fasting and drinking only water, Chitraketu for 1 week continuously chanted with great care and attention the mantra given by Narad Muni. 28. Tata saptaratrante vidyaya dharma dharyamanaya vidyadharadhyaptyam cha lebe pratihatam nripa. O King Parikshit, after only 1 week of repeatedly practicing the mantra received from the spiritual master, Chitraketu achieved the rule of the planet of the Vidyadharas as an intermediate product of his spiritual advancement and knowledge. Right. So Vidyadhara Adhipatayam, mastership of the Vidyadharas. And this phrase, as an intermediate product, is added by Srila Prabhupada contextually, because we know that ultimately he will get the darshan of Lord Sankarshan. So the intermediate result is that he was awarded the adhyaksh. So he became the leaders of the Vidyadharas. So Vidyadharas, they live in the Antariksh, right? They're below the Swarga and above the Bhu. And they're called Vidyadharas because they are replete with knowledge. Right? And so in that realm, there are different types of of celestial beings, and they have different specialities, the Gandharvas and the Kim Purushas. Kim Purushas are actually not in that region. The Kim Purushas are actually lower in the Bhumandal. But then the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Siddhas, and the Vidyadharas. So they're different. The Siddhas have Siddhis. So Vidyadharas are full of knowledge. Right? So Chitraketu, he took this position in order to render service to Krishna. Right? So this is the situation where the devotees, they have a good understanding of their own adhikar. Right? So he is not making a claim for pure devotional service, but he would like to make devotional advancement. Right? So when Sukadeva Goswami was in the womb of his mother, then he asked for protection from Mayadevi. Right? For 16 years he was in the womb of his mother. He asked for protection from Mayadevi. Why? Because he wanted to make devotional advancements. Right? Dhruv Maharaj, we see that he ruled for whatever 36,000 years, and he ruled as a powerful emperor. So it's said that he was dominating, like he was vanquishing his enemies, but really speaking, he was doing all that to serve the Lord. So he was vanquishing those who were opposed to the principles of dharma. Same thing with Parishit Maharaj, that he ruled for whatever the two or three decades, but his rule was completely focused on serving the Lord. Prevat Maharaj, right? Initially he said, no, I don't want to rule. But then Brahma convinced him, and he became the ruler of Bhumanda to serve Swayambhavu Manu, his father, and Brahma. So in the Samudra Manthan pastime, Srila Prabhupada notes that the opulence of the devotees are as permanent as that of the Supreme Lord. Right? So what does that mean? So it means that by the will of the Supreme Lord, the opulences are bestowed and withdrawn. Arjun, he was an extraordinary warrior. But when Krishna left the planet, he could not even fight against the Adivasis who were fighting with sticks and stones. Right? So it's a two-way street, that the devotees will make use of these opulences to serve the Lord. And the Lord will bestow these opulences on the devotees to help them make advancement. Prabhupada writes that if a devotee, after being initiated, adheres rigidly to the instructions of the spiritual master, he is naturally endowed with the material opulences of Vidyadhara, Adhipatyam, and similar posts as byproducts. A devotee need not practice yoga, karma, or gyan to achieve a successful result. Devotional service alone is competent to award a devotee all the material power. And very important point Prabhupada makes, that sometimes people try to, like Rampal Maharaj had this seminar in Bhagavad Gita called, forget the name of the seminar, but essentially it was the two pocket system, a pocket for Krishna and a pocket for Maya. And devotees try to keep it separate. Now, this is my spiritual life, this is my material life. Where Prabhupada is saying that if you perfect your spiritual life, then all your material desires will be automatically fulfilled. However, then Prabhupada says that even with all this material opulences, the devotees are never attached to them. Okay, next verse, 29. Tathakati payaho bhe vidyayed manogati jagam deva devasya sheshasya charanantikam. Thereafter, within a very few days, by the influence of the mantra that Chitraketu had practiced, his mind became increasingly enlightened in spiritual progress, and he attained the shelter at the lotus feet of Anantadev. Right, so this is the primary result. The secondary result was that he had become Adipatya Vidyadhara, that he had become the leaders of the Vidyadhara. Now, by continuing to worship the Lord by the mantra, he actually attains Lord Sankarshan. So Sheshaya. So Sheshaya is Ananta Shesh, also known as Lord Sankarshan. Right? So Srila Prabhupada writes about how to consider material opulences during the pursuit of bhakti, building on the point previously, that one should consider that bhakti is primary and the material opulences are secondary. Right? So the example is that if the tiger attacks a cow, then the cow needs to be protected and the tiger needs to be attacked. When two cows fight with each other, then both the cows need to be protected and the fighting needs to be resolved. So when a materialist attacks a spiritualist, then the materialists need to be condemned and the spiritualist protected. However, in the scriptures, we will see sometimes or often two scriptural statements apparently contradicting one another, or two spiritual personalities contradicting one another. This is like the two cows fighting. In that case, it does not behoove one to try and kill one cow to protect another. What is expected is both the cows need to be protected and the fighting resolved, which means that one should give respect to contradicting statements in the scriptures. One should give respects to contradicting spiritual personalities. And if possible, try and resolve. Like sometimes we see these contradictory statements like the Lord is within and outside. Right? So both are spiritual statements, both are coming from Yesopnishan. So we don't say that okay, that one is a lie, or we don't say both are lies. We resolve it by saying is within us as Paramatma and is outside as the universal form. Right? So Prabhupada, he is glorifying material opulence achieved as a byproduct of spiritual advancement. But then we also see that at different times, Prabhupada, he criticizes material opulences. He even criticizes philanthropy, right? At other places, he will recommend that devotees should run businesses, should cultivate rich people, should become rich, should take powerful positions, become judges, become ministers, etc. Right? So these are statements that need to be treated as cows. That both the statements are correct, the context needs to be established. So Prabhupada writes that as a result of rigid execution of devotional service, a devotee receives all material opulences if these are required. Otherwise, the devotee is not interested in material opulences, nor does the Supreme Lord award them. When a devotee is actually engaged in devotional service of the Lord, his apparent material opulences are not material, they are spiritual. That's a powerful statement. For example, if a devotee spends money to construct a beautiful and costly temple, the construction is not material but spiritual. And then he concludes as Maharaj Vidyadhar remained in material opulence as Vidyadhar Pati, the master of the Vidyadhars, and by executing devotional service, he became perfect. Okay, so we'll stop over here and see if there's any discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a comment also. When Krishna left the planet, and then there's a story about Narad Muni traveling and saw an old lady that was crying, has two sons, Jnana and Vairagya. We discussed about that before. There also Narad Muni. And then, they said that bhakti cannot be achieved without Jnana and Vairagya. And Narad Muni take a vow saying that even in Kali Yuga, where there will be no Jnana and Vairagya, bhakti will prevail. And this whole promise is about, Krishna come, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the whole person of ISKCON. Even every time when Prabhupada was there somewhere and said, bring a chair, Narad Muni is here. Can't you see him? Several times Prabhupada said, that means as soon as Krishna left, Narad Muni's objective to promise to Bhakti Devi about Gyan and Vairagya was achieved via the endeavor of Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhu, I fully agree with your observation. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so if we have no more questions, we'll stop here. We'll meet on Wednesday. वाञ्छकल्पतरूपयश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, शील प्रभुपाद की जय, जय गौर प्रेमानंद। हरि हरि, हरे कृष्णा। Thank you so much.